You ever have one of those mornings where you just know trouble's brewing before you've even had your first cup of coffee? That was me standing on my porch, mug in hand, watching Karen. Yeah. That Karen charging up my driveway with a face as red as the paint she was about to lose her mind over. She's waving some HOA violation notice in the air like she's leading a one-woman parade, stomping so hard the gravel's practically jumping out of her way. This is absolutely unacceptable, she shrieks, her voice hitting a pitch that makes the neighbor's dog start howling. You have 48 hours to repaint that barn or you'll be fined $500 a day. I swear you'd think I'd started a goat farm in her living room the way she was carrying on. But I just took a slow, deliberate sip of coffee because honestly, I'd been waiting for this exact showdown since she started her campaign of petty tyranny. I set my mug down, looked her straight in the eye, and in my calmest Sunday morning voice said, "Karen, you're standing on my property. In fact, you and your HOA have been trespassing on my land every time you've had a meeting, held an event, or even picked up your mail for the last 5 years. You should have seen her jaw. It just dropped, then snapped shut, then opened again like a fish out of water." She tried to argue, sputtering about how it was common area, but I had my phone ready, pulled up the property survey, and showed her right there on the screen. "This," I said, "is all mine. That mailbox cluster, the cute little gazebo you love to use for your HOA powwows, even the welcome sign, all built on my land. Now let me back up a second because you're probably wondering how on earth we got here. See, about a year ago, I retired from 30 years as a firefighter, figured I'd earned some peace and quiet, so I bought this ranch out on the edge of Meadowbrook Estates. It's a real beauty, about 20 acres, with an old farmhouse that needed a little love and a barn perfect for tinkering with woodwork. Best part was the place predated the HOA by 4 decades. I was grandfathered out, no silly rules, no mandatory dues, no Karen. Or so I thought. The guy who sold me the place, Earl, good old guy, told me, "Keep an ace up your sleeve when you deal with those HOA folks." Didn't really get what he meant back then, but boy, did it make sense later. From the get-go, Karen had her eyes on me, standing in her perfectly manicured yard, arms crossed, lips pursed as if she could stare me into submission. She ran that HOA like a dictator. Her husband was more of a rumor than a person. Her kids were ghosts, and even her poodle looked scared to bark without her approval. I started fixing up the place, painted the house a nice sage green with white trim, put in some solar panels, even planted a garden full of wildflowers. I knew the colors weren't approved, but again, not my HOA. That's when the notes started showing up, passive-aggressive masterpieces taped to my fence. "Dear neighbor, while we appreciate your efforts to improve the community, sage green is not on the Meadowbrook Estates palette." You know what I mean, right? Like I'd asked for her blessing. I ignored the notes, but ignoring Karen is like waving a red flag in front of a bull. She escalated, complained about my barn, my solar panels, my dangerous garden that attracted too many bees. When I repainted the barn a classic deep red, mostly because I liked it, but also because I knew it would drive her nuts, she lost it. I found an official-looking violation letter tucked under my windshield wiper that night. 23 infractions, threats of legal action, the whole 9 yards. That's when I decided enough was enough. I hired Patricia Martinez, a real estate attorney who eats HOA boards for breakfast. First thing she said, "Let's see every deed, every easement, every dusty scrap of paperwork." Turns out Earl, my predecessor, had quietly bought a sliver of land, a triangle that cut right into what became the HOA's common area. That common land, actually mine. They'd built their mailboxes, their welcome sign, even their fancy $40,000 gazebo on my property. Patricia was grinning ear to ear. "They've been trespassing for years. You want to play hardball?" We sent the board a formal letter, polite but firm. "Either negotiate a lease or get your stuff off my land in 30 days. Karen. She stormed over the next morning, nearly vibrating with rage, shouting about harassment, threatening lawsuits, screaming about adverse possession like she'd just watched a legal drama. "You need 20 years for that," I told her. "You're 5 years short, and you didn't even know you didn't own it." Things got wild. Emergency HOA meetings, newsletters about the hostile neighbor, attempts to get the news involved. But then the HOA's own lawyer read the deeds and just wilted. I stood by my fence that night listening to their emergency meeting. The lawyer's voice was flat. "The land belongs to Mr. Reynolds. We have no claim." Faces went from confused to panicked. Someone asked about adverse possession. The lawyer shook his head. No dice. Then the real fireworks started. Karen stood up so fast her chair nearly toppled. We'll fight this. We'll sue for emotional distress. Their own lawyer sighed and told her the only way out was to negotiate, especially since I'd offered a lease for 10 grand a month, which was a bit of a bluff on my part. When I suggested 5 grand instead, with a list of conditions like my land stays HOA free forever, no more bogus complaints, and Karen herself was banned from setting foot on my property, except for official business, the crowd was stunned. The neighbors started turning on Karen. They wanted to know how this happened, why nobody double-checked the boundaries, how much it was going to cost them. Someone brought up a forensic accounting of the HOA funds. Karen's face went pale. She tried to keep control, but her power was slipping with every whispered conversation. Next morning, Karen showed up at my door alone and deflated. No shouting this time, just a quiet, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to live in peace, paint my barn, whatever color I want, and get compensated for the use of my land." She muttered something about the board never agreeing to 5 grand a month. I shrugged. "Make me a counteroffer. But every day you wait is another day you're trespassing." It dragged out for a month, but we finally settled 3 grand a month, 99-year lease, and the ironclad rule that my property would never fall under their rules. Karen got hit with a personal restraining order, couldn't come within 100 feet of my line unless it was for official HOA business. That last meeting when they signed the deal was the same one where the forensic audit results came out. Turns out Karen had been using HOA funds to pay for her own landscaping, 40 grand over 5 years. She was out as president in a landslide vote. Word got around fast. Her employer, the local bank, found out and fired her for code of conduct violations. The DA brought embezzlement charges, and 6 months later I watched from my now turquoise barn as Karen stood before a judge guilty on all counts. 18 months in state prison, 20 grand in fines, ordered to pay back every penny. As the bailiff led her away in cuffs, she glanced at me, eyes full of rage and disbelief, like it was my fault she lost everything over a paint color. So was I wrong to stand my ground? Or did Karen finally get what was coming to her? You tell me. Drop your thoughts below, because in these HOA dramas, there's always another side to the story. Let's hear it. Who's really in the right? And where do we draw the line on community rules?